Here we are on turn 8, it's a victory point turn. Haven't seen a lot moving so far. The Vandals made some attacks and they got themselves killed doing so. They restored their cities here. The Berbers sacked Africa. That was more points than trying to hold it anyway. We're moving on to Byzantium, which is getting really, really tiny. This is all we got left, but they got a huge fleet. So the Byzantines used their naval power to help them take the Sicilian coast. They also killed the Vandals, which is worth 3 victory points for bagging them for the Byzantines. The Patrimonium moved forward and grabbed a city. They had been in Umbria. They want the higher victory points, better defensive values. Cities in the mountains are really, really tough to hit. You basically need a 10 unless you have modifiers, and that's kind of hard to get. So now we're up to the Lombards. Okay, end of 8. Let me explain what happened and then go over the victory point situation. I think trying to figure out if I had done where I had gotten. I think I had gotten past the Byzantines. Okay, so the Lombards were the big one, and they swept through this area, gathering a lot of points. Now, not as many as they could because some of the ancillary events put people in places. They did grab dominance over the papacy, but again that goes away. And let's see where we go after that. The Avars spread out. Now the Arabs swept through and over into Sicily. Now in doing so they actually lost their navy. 2 ships of it to the Byzantines. But they got some reasonable points and got themselves in a position for the next victory point turn, I think. And then the Franks more or less wiped themselves out. They pillaged that after being wiped out by the Lombards, basically. Point-wise, and I'm sure I've screwed stuff up here, but right now the lead is at 87.5 for green. That's the Arabs. They picked a pretty good 15 or so points. Likewise, about the same amount of points collected, 9, 17, 18 points collected, 87 for yellow. So they're doing pretty well. The lead is actually red, though, at 97.5. And they didn't get quite as many points, but they're in pretty good shape. And then finally, blue is trailing at 71. And they don't have much left. I think they've spent their wad. The Byzantines and the Avars are not going to have any great resurgence that I know of. So here we are at the beginning of turn 9. Something I forgot to do at the end of turn 8 after the scoring was removing all the Ostrogoths. They just disappear from the game at this point. And I don't like that. And I can just tell you right off the bat, this is the first game I've seen where a historical group just disappears. They had no way out of where they were down here. This isn't like the Roman invasion in Britain where everything just floods out. There would be no easy way for the Ostrogoths to just get out of here. So they should be assimilating into something or flowing back, or there should be a mechanism in place that allowed them to get out of there in a reasonable manner. Just bugs me. So, see, the Byzantines kind of held where they were, and the Patrimonium expanded into Naupolis. The Burgundians went and they advanced into here, and we can see the Lombards knocked them back, what's left of them. The Lombards also wiped out the Avars. The reason the Lombards are being so aggressive, and they attacked Rome and got a submission there as well, is once again they have a dominate North Italy goal, and base 7 victory points. They lost 1 due to the Franks, but they pulled in 6 extra points. And to finish things off on turn 9, we had the Arabs, who pretty much focused on grabbing the last space in Sicily, something they want for the last turn. And then the Franks, who went on the war, they got some additional troops. They went on the warpath against the Lombards, caused some casualties here and here and here. But the important thing is they grabbed Pavia. Pavia is vital to them. First of all, they need a correct and owned Pavia to get the title of Emperor on the next turn with Charlemagne. But it's also really hard to get. It's worth points to them. It's easy to defend. I mean, it's a mountain city. That's the big thing. You need 10s to hit those things. And then maybe the another big aspect, they have to wipe out all of the Lombards to get a victory point next. They get victory points off that. So, you know, right now Red's in the lead, I believe, at 97.5. To maintain that lead, they want to really optimize. They're not taking chances, but they want to make sure that they get a reasonable slew of points next turn. Taking Pavia was a huge bonus for them. Alright, so here we are in the 10th and final turn, which is of course a victory point turn, and we've proceeded most of the way through, but a lot of those don't actually exist. Got a lot of little guys out of the way. So let's see what we did. The Sardinians didn't do anything. They chased a fleet around. Berbers couldn't make it to Africa, the city, which is valuable to them, so they grabbed a couple of areas. Whether or not they'll be able to hold them is pretty questionable. Onto the Byzantines, they wanted to hold their one territory. They failed to, and I'll explain that in a moment. They gathered their fleet to help do so. And then the Patrimonium, they used their special conversion counters both on this turn. Basically moving into Ravenna changed a Lombard army into one of... They didn't have to move in. Oh yeah, they did. Into one of their own. And now they have, without fighting, taken the city and have it nicely defended. And they tried the same against the Byzantines here, but the Byzantines had 2 units there. Patrimonium moved, I think, 2 in, converted 1, and eventually won the battle. They're nicely set up. I think Red's got a pretty good position at this point. We'll see what happens. So here we are on the final turn, still just before the Franks' turn. I haven't put them out. There's going to be a pile, Charlemagne in a pile up there, up in the north. So, where did we stop? We stopped at I think just before the Lombards, actually. I don't know if we did the Burgundians. I don't think so. The Burgundians came down and grabbed a city. The Lombards are trying to position themselves to prevent Charlemagne from becoming emperor. That's about all they can succeed at. They couldn't take Pavia. They did run in and take this back from the Patrimonium. They made an attack on Perusia, which failed, and I'm not sure that they have the best defensive line. If they hadn't attacked Perusia, they could have had a stronger line here. Right now it's possible that Charlemagne's going to be able to make it down to Rome and be crowned emperor. But they had to take some risks. Grabbed at least 1 city. Okay, after them came the Avars, who now had a clear path into some areas and can get a couple points. And then the Arabs, who focused all their production on attacking the Berbers, and they only got halfway there. They failed. They also expanded into southern Italy, because that's worth a point. So here we're at the end of Italia, second scenario. Happened since then. Basically, the Franks moved. They had a lot of money for their campaign. They start with 6 for it. They also had like 3 left over or something. It was enough that they could run in a big circle, basically come down, run down, over and around, and wipe everything out. They gave them bonus points for killing the Lombards, for getting the Empire. Strange thing. Apparently the Patrimonium has to retreat. I didn't realize that was the case. So now the Franks own Rome itself. It's not as big a point swing in that case. If you control the Pope, you don't really have to go become Emperor. It's only a couple of points. They ended up scoring a total of like 20 points for the turn off the Franks, and wiping out everyone else's scoring capability. So of course they won. And my final total is, zoom back in again, this is like the 3D House of Horrors. 125.5 versus 97 for their nearest competitor, yellow. 93.5 for green, and blue is just so far out of it. Had nothing left on the map. First time playing though, there's no way I can tell you, hey, is this a balanced game, is it not? It's like when you have a bunch of newbies playing one of these games. Alright, I'm gonna pack this one up. I found this scenario more annoying than the first one. In large part because so many of the powers had these at any time points. So you have to keep checking back and forth and everything. Those are usually pretty rare in the first scenario there were a few. I don't know if there are any in Britannia. There are some in Hispania, but less. I think it's a poor decision to have that. Another thing, component-wise, I've already mentioned this in the other one. Some of the cards have important stuff on the other side of the card. So, for example, the Franks have their rules on the Emperor. That's not too bad. But some of them have some of their points spilling over to there. That's a pain in the butt. And we already know about that card. Alright, well, unfortunately I wasn't as thrilled playing this. It's not a series I really like, and we'll get into that later. But I was kind of psyched for some reason for the first scenario. I'm having a hard time. I had a hard time pushing through this one and enjoying it. So, if I sounded a little down, yeah, well, I'm also kind of depressive right now, but that's a different point. Alright, let me get this one up to you guys.